Okay, I mentioned that I had a couple of subnotes for the subject. Let's get started on that. Here's the first one called, "These apocryphal books do not express the pure truth of God." I don't know any serious scholar that actually believes that the apocryphal books are total trash or are ready to toss right into the dumpster. In fact, they can be very useful for biblical studies and historical research. So that's not the argument or real issue about or against the Apocrypha. The real issue is whether or not these books can be considered authoritative scripture, canon, as to be the pure breath of God in every whit, void of any man's flesh. That's the question. Whilst a lot of them do complement the authoritative texts in part, some also begin to wander seriously off the beaten path of pure truth. And if that's really the case, then any serious Bible student should be able to tell you that just a little leaven will leaven the entire lump of bread, as is talked about in Matthew 16:12 and 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 6 through 7. That is, if you can't trust any portion of a book, then you should be dubious about any of it. There could be mistakes anywhere. And only read through it very carefully. Again, I'm going to explore these issues a bit better in my upcoming book on biblical authority. The Bible's not a buffet, it's history, it's reliability. Now, let's go down to our next explanatory subnote called, "Never, not even once, did any of them quote from what's considered to be the Apocrypha. And yet, we do have this witness." We go to Jude chapter 1, verses 14 through 15. "And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of thee, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all of their ungodly deeds, which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him." Admittedly, this is a puzzle to many scholars. Also, admittedly, even to myself. Nobody knows of where Jude got his information. Not from the book of Genesis. But it's not a foregone conclusion that it wasn't a direct revelation from Christ to him concerning what Enoch had said. But perhaps it's more logical to conclude that he got it from some ancient book that's completely unknown to us today. Ironically, there is a book that did show up much later having the name Enoch attached to it. And perhaps even more ironically, it did contain similar wording inside to what Jude said here. Naturally, many people have concluded that that's where Jude got his information, despite the fact that most of that book has outlandish writings in it which do not match up with Scripture. You should read it for yourself. Therefore, and because of that, many others have concluded that what was found was actually a later copy after Jude had wrote his words down, simply added in Jude's words into it to make it appear to be authentic. Scholars are certainly divided upon that subject. However, such a find does not prove that Jude copied his ideas from that apocryphal book. Despite what is known to us today as the Apocrypha, there certainly are other books that are mentioned in the Bible itself that have not come to light as of yet. That is, no copy of them is known to exist in our modern times. Which again, these are not from the Apocrypha, but were written earlier than those external books. Actually written during the Old Testament days themselves. These books are as follows. We got the book of Jasher. We see this in Joshua 10:13, 2 Samuel 1:18. We have the book of the wars of the Lord, seen in Numbers 21:14. We have the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel and Chronicles of the Kings of Judah from 1 Kings 14:19 and 29. The book of Shemaiah, the prophet, and visions of Iddo the seer, 2 Chronicles 9:29, 12:15, and 13:22. The manner of the kingdom, 1 Samuel 10:25. The Acts of Solomon, 1 Kings 11:41. The Annals of King David, 1 Chronicles 27:24. I mean, where are these books at? The book of Samuel the seer, as is seen in 1 Chronicles 29:29. The book of Nathan the prophet, 1 Chronicles 29:29, and 2 Chronicles 9:29. Again, none of these books are part of the Apocrypha. The book of Gad the seer, 1 Chronicles 29:29, if I didn't already say that. The prophecy of Ahijah, 2 Chronicles 9:29. The books of the kings of Judah and Israel, 2 Chronicles 16:11, 27:7, 32:32, etc., etc., etc. See for more books than what I've just listed in our Wikipedia page here. I'll put it here on the screen. Now, what this tells us is that there were other books that had the truth of God in them. But, and also as some believe, they were unnecessary to add to the canon because many of them may actually have been repeats of what was already in the actual books of what's considered the authoritative canon. Or that God simply didn't need them within the final collection because his children have enough in what's considered today as to be the Old Testament to help them to enter on into salvation. Be that as it may, these books remain a total mystery for us today. As for my own thoughts, I see the original book of Enoch, if there ever was such a thing, as to being one of those lost books, and not what has been brought to our attention in our modern times, that obscure version with Enoch's name attached to it, and that what Jude had in his possession, or what he had read prior to his own letter being written down, was one of those lost books that I just got through listing. Now, concerning me pointing out about Enoch's name being attached to this apocryphal book, we should know that it had become very popular in the New Testament apocryphal books. That is, those written after the book of Revelation, and indeed even on some that were written after Malachi, before Jesus was ever born on earth. It was popular to attach a famous name to a title page, which fact also was pointed out in Lee Strobel's book, The Case for Christ. Such name placings gave those books weight to try and prove that what was written inside was authentic, though they contradicted the actual scriptures quite often and terribly. Now, let's go to Adam Clarke's commentary on the Bible that was published in 1810 through 1826. It's public domain. He says, "Now on the book of Enoch, from which this prophecy is thought to be taken, much has been said about it. But as the work is apocryphal and of no authority at all, I shall not burden my page with any extracts from it." The Biblical Illustrator by Joseph S. Exall, published in 1900, public domain. There is indeed an apocryphal book called the Book of Enoch, which appears to have been often used by the early fathers and to have acquired a great celebrity in the first days of Christianity. For centuries, this book was supposed to have been lost, and our only knowledge of it was derived from quotations and other writings. An Ethiopic version was at length discovered in Ethiopia, brought to England by the well-known traveler Bruce. In this book, there are passages which answer very nearly to the prophecy recorded by Jude. It has therefore been a common supposition, that the apostle derived from this book the prediction which he ascribes to that patriarch. But the likelihood is that the book of Enoch was written after the epistle of Jude, so that Jude could not have drawn the prophecy from that apocryphal book, but rather the writer of the book inserted it in the prophecy that he might give it, this forgery, the appearance of truth. We may believe, therefore, that in all probability, Jude was informed of the prediction by immediate revelation. But whatever the source whence the apostle derived it from, we may be certain that the prophecy was actually delivered by Enoch. Okay, let's go to Albert Barnes' Notes of the Bible, 1847 through 85. Public domain says, the source from which Jude derived this passage respecting the prophecy of Enoch is actually unknown. Amidst the multitude of traditions, however, handed down by the Jews from a remote antiquity, though many of them were false and many of a trifling character, it's reasonable to presume that some of them were true and were of importance. No man can prove that the one before us is not of that character. No one can show that an inspired writer might be led to make the selection of a true prophecy from a mass of traditions, as the prophecy before us is one that would be every way worthy of a prophet and worthy to be preserved. Its quotation furnishes no argument against the inspiration of Jude. There is no clear evidence that he quoted it from any book extant in his time. There is indeed now apocryphal writing called the Book of Enoch, containing a prediction strongly resembling this, but there's no certain proof that it existed so early as the time of Jude, nor if it did, is it absolutely certain that he even quoted from it. Both Jude and the author of that book may have quoted a common tradition of their time, where there is no doubt that the passage referred to was handed down by tradition. The passage as found in the book of Enoch is in these words, behold, he comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon them, and destroy the wicked, and reprove all the carnal for everything which the sinful and ungodly have done and committed against him. Chapter 2, page 86. If the book of Enoch was written after the time of Jude, it's natural to suppose that the prophecy referred to by him, handed down by tradition, would be inserted inside of it. This book was discovered in an Ethiopic version and was published with a translation by Dr. Lawrence of Oxford in 1821 and then reprinted in 1832, or republished, that is. A full account of it and its contents may be seen in an article by Professor Stewart in the Repository for January 1840, pages 86 through 137. Now, finally, Matthew Henry's commentary on the whole Bible, published 1805, public domain. He says this. Some say that this prophecy of Enoch was preserved by tradition in the Jewish church. Others that the apostle Jude was immediately inspired with a notice of it. Be this as it may, it is certain that there was such a prophecy of ancient date, of long standing, and universally received in the Old Testament church, and it is a main point of our New Testament creed.